She had no name to them, no identity beyond her skin, her hoodie, and the assumption that she didn't belong. Amara Johnson walked into North Crest Automotive just after lunch. The showroom smelled like leather and lemon polish, lined with rows of gleaming metal beasts engineered for people who measured time in stock options and power in legacy. Her sneakers squeaked once on the tile before silence swallowed her whole. She didn't expect anyone to cheer. But she also didn't expect what happened next. The receptionist, a young white woman with platinum hair pulled into a severe ponytail, looked up and instantly tensed. "May I help you?" she asked, not welcoming but wary. Amara gave a polite smile. "Yeah. I'm looking for the Ghost Series 2. You guys carry Rolls-Royce, right?" The woman blinked once, her lips twitching. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Amara said, still trying to smile, "but I checked your site. Walk-ins are okay before 4 p.m., yeah." The receptionist's eyes did a full-body scan. Her gaze stuck on the hoodie, the natural curls, the skin, the age. "Just a moment," she said. She picked up the phone and whispered quickly, eyes never leaving Amara. A tall man in a fitted suit emerged from behind a frosted glass door. Slick hair. Tan face. He looked past Amara before realizing she was the one standing there. "I'm Marcus. Sales director," he said. "You're here to see the Rolls?" "Yeah," Amara nodded. "The Ghost. I like the minimalist line. I saw it in matte black with copper trim." He held up his hand. "Miss, do you have a budget in mind?" Amara raised a brow. "I'm looking to buy. If the car is here, I'd like to test it." Marcus chuckled. It wasn't a kind laugh. "Test drives are for qualified buyers. You'll need a credit check first. Do you have any form of employment verification or—" "I'm not applying for a job," Amara said, voice flat. "I said I want to buy a car." "Right. Of course. But this is a high-value item. We've had people walk in before, waste our time. You understand." She didn't flinch. "I do understand." "You do?" "Yeah. You looked at me and decided I don't belong here." Marcus's face shifted, but the smirk stayed. "Ma'am, don't make this into something it isn't." Behind her, another salesman whispered something to a colleague. They both laughed. The receptionist was already dialing security. Marcus sighed. "Look, why don't you come back with your parent or guardian? Maybe then we can discuss options more seriously." Amara stared at him. "You're not even trying to hide it." "Hide what?" he snapped. She didn't answer. She turned to leave, but stopped in the middle of the showroom. The lights above hit the polish of a Rolls-Royce Cullinan just right. Her reflection stared back at her from the deep onyx paint. She looked tired. Small. But not defeated. The security guard, a thick-chested man with a radio clipped to his belt, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to exit the premises." She walked. Not a single word. Not a single tear. She didn't give them the performance they were silently hoping for. Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds. Her rideshare app took 4 minutes to connect. For minutes alone on the curb, while salesmen watched her through the glass like she was a movie. She got in the car and stared out the window the whole way home. Malcolm Johnson sat in his home office, 2 monitors on, phone in hand, when Amara walked in and dropped her backpack by the door. He turned and noticed the look on her face. "What happened?" She hesitated. "Talk to me." She told him. He listened. No outrage. No raised voice. Just silence. A deep, unnerving silence. When she finished, he didn't curse or pace. He looked at his phone, pressed a number, and spoke calmly. "Schedule a delivery for tomorrow morning. Phantom. Matte black. Tag it with my seal. Make sure it arrives right when they open." Amara folded her arms. "I didn't tell you so you'd send a car." "I'm not sending a car." "You just said." "I'm sending a message." She said nothing. Malcolm looked at her. "You want to let this go?" "No," she said, jaw tight. "But I didn't want it to become a thing. I wanted a damn car. That's it." He nodded. And now it's something else. She turned to leave. Whatever. Do what you want. He watched her go. Not angry. Just disappointed in the world that made her feel small. The next morning, North Crest opened at 9 a.m. At 8:59, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled into the circular driveway. It bore a single mark on its hood, a custom insignia, MJ Tech. Everyone in the city knew that symbol. The driver, in a black suit, stepped out and handed a sealed envelope to the receptionist. She opened it, and her face drained of color. Marcus walked up, curious. She handed it to him. His eyes scanned the top line. Malcolm Johnson, intent to litigate. Racial discrimination and civil denial of service. Attached was a photo. Not of the incident. Of Amara. Smiling. Cap and gown. Speaking at a youth summit hosted by MJ Tech Foundation. Below it, your employee didn't recognize her. But the world will. Marcus swallowed hard. Behind him, salesmen stopped moving. No one knew what to say. The driver got back in the Phantom. As it pulled away, Marcus noticed the plate. Her name. Amara didn't go to school that day. She sat by the window, watching the neighborhood stir. Her phone vibrated. Messages from friends. Screenshot. Headlines. Social posts. Black girl kicked out of dealership. Next day her billionaire dad sends a Phantom. Rolls-Royce, racism, and reputation. North Crest in hot water. Hashtag her name began trending. She didn't smile. Not yet. Malcolm walked in, holding a mug. He didn't ask for thanks. Didn't offer comfort. He just handed her a copy of a thick document. Johnson vs. North Crest Automotive, Civil Complaint Draft. You're not just buying a car anymore, he said. You're buying a voice. She read the opening line. Plaintiff Amara Johnson, age 17, resident of Alameda County, was publicly denied service and dignity due to implicit and explicit racial bias. She stopped reading. I didn't ask for this, she said softly. I know, he replied. But maybe I'm the right one for it. He nodded. Not a word more was needed. Outside, the clouds were gone. The Phantom didn't make noise. It didn't need to. At precisely 8:59 a.m., it glided to a perfect stop in front of North Crest Automotive. Its matte black finish swallowed the morning glare. The emblem on the hood wasn't the standard Spirit of Ecstasy. It had been replaced with something custom. A minimalist crest, 2 wings spread behind a rising sun, a bold M carved into its center. Malcolm Johnson's personal mark. The valet hesitated to approach. Before he could step forward, the driver's door opened. A tall man in a fitted charcoal suit stepped out, nodded once, and opened the rear door. 3 people emerged. 1 woman, 2 men, all carrying black leather folders. No cameras, no press, just presence. Deliberate, heavy, and precise. Marcus, the sales director, saw them from his office window. He squinted, looked again, and recognized one of the men. Vernon Clark, senior partner at Clark, Bell & Stowe, one of the most feared litigation firms on the West Coast. By the time he reached the reception area, the lead woman was already presenting a legal notice to the front desk. This is for Mr. Marcus Langley, she said. I'm Marcus. You've been served, she said. You may want to read the full document. He took the envelope. His hands shook slightly. He opened it and scanned. Class action, civil rights violation, breach of equal accommodation statutes, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Plaintiffs: Amara Johnson, Malcolm Johnson, and any others affected by discriminatory practices at North Crest Automotive. Attached were 5 sworn declarations from previous customers, each recounting similar experiences. 1 Latina mother, 2 young black professionals, a Nigerian professor, a disabled Asian American veteran. All denied test drives. All dismissed before they could speak. The complaint alleged a pattern. Behind Marcus, the receptionist whispered into her phone. The other salespeople stopped pretending to work. The lawyer spoke again. You'll be receiving additional documentation within the week. Our client recommends you preserve all security footage and communication logs from the past 72 hours. Deletion will be considered obstruction. Marcus didn't respond. The woman turned, nodded to her colleagues, and walked out. The rolls remained still for another 10 seconds before it, too, rolled away, quiet as ever. But the silence left behind was explosive. By noon, 3 major news outlets had picked up the story. The initial posts went viral, images of the dealership, the phantom, the legal document. Mjteka's media account released a single statement. Equality isn't a luxury. It's a right. No further comment. At first, the dealership tried damage control. A quick press release claimed it was a misunderstanding, and that they welcome customers of all backgrounds. But the internet wasn't interested in excuses. Screenshots emerge. Anonymous employee testimonies surface. One former intern posted a thread describing monthly sales meetings where customers were ranked by appearance value. The tweet read, "If you didn't wear a Rolex, they treated you like trash." The story evolved. It wasn't just about one girl. It was about how many girls, how many people, had walked into spaces like that and left unseen. Meanwhile, Amara stayed home. She hadn't asked for the spotlight, but it had landed squarely on her. Her face was everywhere. Graduation photos, charity events, clips of her giving a talk at a youth tech expo when she was 15. People called her an icon. Some said she was ungrateful. Others said she was brave. All she felt was exposed. She didn't read the comments. Not after the first hour. At dinner, Malcolm laid his phone face down and looked across the table. "They're scrambling." "I saw," she said. "More people are coming forward." "I saw that too." He paused. "You don't have to carry this." "I already am," she said. "I just didn't get to choose the size." He nodded. She pushed her plate aside. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to make it a media thing." "I didn't make it a media thing," he said. "I made it a legal one. Public came with it." She gave a tired smile. "I wanted to walk in, pick a car, drive out, and smile because I earned it." "You did earn it." "Not if they never let me speak." He studied her. "That's why we're going to make sure they never do that to anyone else." She didn't reply. But the next morning, she got dressed early. No hoodie. No statement. Just clean jeans, a blazer, and her curls tied back. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Going somewhere?" "Downtown. I heard one of the women who gave a statement works at the community center. Thought I'd talk to her." "You don't owe her anything." "I know. But she spoke up. Least I can do is say thank you." She left without another word. Later that day, Malcolm met with his legal team. He'd already greenlit a media strategy. Not to glorify the lawsuit, but to support the voices rising because of it. A rolling fund of $5 million would cover legal fees for any individual with credible evidence of discriminatory treatment in high-end retail and luxury service sectors. Clark called it the Respect Fund. A press packet went live. Not flashy. Just names, stories, facts, date, and Amara's photo, centered between 2 headlines. They laughed. Now they listen. That night, Amara sat in her room, watching the news. A talking head on one screen said, "It's not just about wealth. It's about recognition." Another pundit barked, "This is a publicity stunt. She's a billionaire's daughter." But then a voice interrupted. A woman, maybe mid-30s. A guest panelist. "I was that girl once," she said. "Not a billionaire's daughter. Just a teacher who walked into a luxury store and was followed the whole time. I didn't say anything then. But because Amara said something now, maybe I don't have to be quiet anymore." Amara watched in silence. She didn't smile. But something in her settled. She wasn't finished. Not even close. By the end of the week, North Crest Automotive had become a symbol, not of wealth, but of refusal. Refusal to acknowledge, to welcome, to adapt. The lawsuit had triggered a wave of scrutiny, and now other dealerships across the country were under review. Legal filings doubled. Stories flooded social media, some recent, some decades old, all carrying the same tone: exclusion behind glass walls and polished smiles. Amara didn't chase any of it. She let it unfold. She had no press agent, no publicist. She answered no interviews. But still, her silence carried weight. Her photo, always the same one from graduation, appeared beside every article, every think piece, every new post about systemic bias in luxury spaces. Then came the corporate letters. Apologies, clarifications, invitations to discuss further opportunities for understanding and reform. The language was clean, legally padded, and entirely hollow. One dealership offered her a car, any car, free of charge. She didn't respond. Another offered to donate to a charity in her name. She didn't reply. What she did instead was go back to the community center. There, she listened. No cameras, no crowd, just stories. An older woman told her about being denied a test drive in 1984 because she was wearing a church dress and not a business suit. A teenager described how his cousin got asked to leave a luxury store in Beverly Hills for browsing too long. A young mother said she'd saved for 3 years to buy a car, only to be told her kind, usually preferred used options. Amara sat in the circle and said nothing until everyone else had spoken. Then she asked a question that made the room go quiet. What are we building to make sure our kids don't have to come back here with the same stories? That night, she called her father. I want to do something with the fund, she said. He waited. I want to start a project. Not just lawsuit. I want to train people. Train them how? To know their rights. To stand their ground. To not be talked over or passed by. I want pop-up clinics in cities. Real people. Legal tools. Advocacy training. For everyone who's ever walked into a room and been treated like a shadow. Malcolm didn't say no. By Monday, Project Seatbelt launched quietly. Named for the thing most people don't notice until it's needed. The mission was simple. Arm people with knowledge before they walk into places that were never designed to serve them with dignity. The first pop-up happened in Oakland. Then another in Atlanta. Then Detroit. Volunteers distributed pocket guides on legal rights in commercial spaces. Attorneys held Q&A circles. Role-play sessions taught people how to document interactions, when to speak, how to file formal complaints, and how to resist being gaslit into silence. Amara attended all of them. People started recognizing her, but she never stood on stage. She sat in chairs, took notes, asked questions like everyone else. Her presence alone rewrote the atmosphere. Because she wasn't unreachable. She was the kid who tried to buy a car and got told she didn't belong. And she turned that rejection into architecture. Meanwhile, the case progressed. Discovery revealed internal emails from North Crest executive. One from Marcus read, "Don't waste time with browsers who can't afford rubber floor mats." Another, even worse, included a list titled High-Value Profiles, based on zip codes and job titles. No surprise, the list was overwhelmingly white and male. The court filings leaked. Public backlash surged again. Marcus resigned before the deposition phase. The dealership issued another statement, this one full of legal terminology and feigned accountability. But it was too late. Their name was permanently tied to a reckoning. National outlets invited Amara repeatedly for sit-down interviews. She said no every time. Instead, she allowed a journalist from a small, independent black-owned publication to walk with her through one of the seatbelt events. The article that followed wasn't about her wealth, her father, or even the lawsuit. It was about what came after. It ended with this line: Amara Johnson isn't fighting for the spotlight. She's fighting so no one else has to walk into it just to be seen. The article went viral on its own terms. By then, other companies started adjusting. Luxury dealerships updated training protocols. Retail stores revised customer service policies. Some changes were surface level. Others reached deeper. But the shift was happening. Amara wasn't watching it all. She was in a library basement with 5 young people writing lesson plans for middle schoolers on bias, identity, and dignity. She looked up when one of them asked, "Do you think it's actually changing?" "I don't think," she said. "I build like it will." They kept working. The following month, the court ordered North Crest to pay a 7-figure settlement. Most of it went into the Seatbelt Foundation. A portion was distributed to the original plaintiff. Amara refused a payout. When asked why, she answered in a single sentence, "My name's already the receipt." She returned to school in the fall. Quietly. No speeches. No announcements. But her reputation walked in before she did. Some treated her like a hero, others like a threat. She accepted neither. She was, as always, there to learn. One afternoon, a classmate approached her in the library. "My cousin's dealership changed their entire intake process," he said. "Said it was because of you." She looked up. "Then tell your cousin it wasn't because of me." The student blinked. "What?" "It was because someone like me walked in before and left in silence. I just refused to leave quiet." He nodded slowly. She closed her laptop and stood. "It's never about one person. It's about what comes next." Then she left, backpack slung over her shoulder, no security, no driver, just footsteps echoing through the hallway. She wasn't finished. She had just begun. 6 months later, Project Seatbelt had offices in 5 states, partnerships in 12, and a wait list of community centers requesting training. A national civil rights nonprofit folded it into their broader network. The original volunteers were now team leads, organizing clinics across schools, malls, and even airports. The work had outgrown Amara, and she liked it that way. She remained involved but stepped back from being the face. The mission wasn't image. It was infrastructure. The media tried to reignite the spotlight, awards, profiles, shortlists, but she kept turning them down. The work spoke louder when it wasn't choreographed. Instead, Amara focused on expansion. Legal workshops became monthly curriculums. Training materials were translated into Spanish, Vietnamese, and Amharic. Every document carried the same opening sentence: "You belong wherever you stand." Then came the counterattack. One article accused the foundation of creating unnecessary division. A viral video questioned whether Amara's wealth insulated her from the reality she claimed to fight for. A radio host called her a rich girl trying to play Harriet Tubman. The noise was loud, but the movement was louder. Every time someone posted a hit piece, 5 more stories appeared from people who'd walked into spaces and walked out seen. Teachers reported kids using their rights calmly when questioned. Parents emailed that their children stood taller in stores. One letter came from a retired veteran who'd been stopped while test driving a luxury SUV. He used a seatbelt tip to record and report the incident, resulting in disciplinary action for the salesperson and formal apology from the dealership. Amara kept every letter in a digital folder. She called it proof of change. One night, while reviewing an expansion proposal, she paused. "I want to take it inside," she said to the foundation team. "Inside what?" someone asked. "Inside the companies. Let's stop just reacting. Let's preempt. What if we offered internal training? On their dime." Some were skeptical. They didn't want to sanitize the work. But Amara wasn't interested in playing nice. She wanted to play smart. If they're scared of lawsuits, good. But fear won't teach them. We will. Not just about race. About unconscious bias. Cultural literacy. Accountability. We make it hard for them to ignore the mirror. The team agreed. Within weeks, Seatbelt Corporate launched as a consulting arm. Instead of just suing companies, it trained them. And it didn't come cheap. But demand was high. Too many companies were scared of becoming the next headline. Amara had created not just a mission, but a model. Her father watched quietly, proud but distant. He knew what it meant to build something from nothing, to plant seeds that grew beyond his reach. He never once said, "I told you so." He didn't have to. Then the email came. A National Automotive Association invited Amara to speak at their annual summit. The very institutions that once ignored her now wanted her voice at the head table. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she drafted her remarks in private. Not to flatter. To confront. At the summit, she took the stage in a simple black suit. No branding. No entourage. Just truth. "I'm not here to make you comfortable," she began. "I'm here because 6 months ago, I walked into a dealership that decided what I could afford based on how I look. I'm here because that wasn't unique. I'm here because too many of you operate on patterns disguised as standards." She didn't yell. She didn't smile. She explained how implicit bias gets coded into company culture, how customers are filtered before they ever speak, how money doesn't erase perception, how real inclusion means unlearning, not branding. The room didn't applaud until the end. But when they did, it lasted longer than protocol required. Afterward, one executive approached her. "We're ready to train with your program," he said. "You made it hard to ignore." She nodded. "Then start by listening to your own employees. The change doesn't start with a contract. It starts with humility." He looked uncomfortable. She didn't care. Weeks later, the foundation received a major grant from a philanthropic organization. Amara redirected half of it to creating a microfund for Black and brown entrepreneurs seeking to open businesses in traditionally exclusive industries: auto, jewelry, real estate. The goal: to build from inside, not just knock on doors waiting for someone to answer. Amara visited one of the grant recipients in Chicago, a young woman starting a high-end resale luxury watch boutique. She asked how it felt. "Like I'm building a future they never designed for me," the woman said. "That's the right direction," Amara replied. Back at home, she found herself looking at the old dealership's location. North Crest had closed. Not officially, but quietly. A new owner had taken over. The branding was neutral now. No more marble counters or velvet rope. Just people. Just cars. She parked nearby and walked past. No one stopped her. No one looked twice. She smiled, not because they recognized her, but because they didn't. Progress wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was the quiet normalcy of fairness. Amara returned to her apartment that night and turned off her phone. She sat on the floor, rereading the first letter she wrote to herself after the dealership incident. It simply said, "Don't forget how it felt. Let that be your compass." She hadn't forgotten. She never would. She folded the letter, put it back, and opened a new document. At the top, she typed the title for her next initiative: Legacy Without Permission. Because that's what this was now, not just resistance, not just reform. It was reclamation. A year after the lawsuit, Amara stood at the edge of what she had built, not on a stage or in front of a camera, but within systems that once resisted her presence. Project Seatbelt had become more than advocacy, it was infrastructure. The microfund had already seeded 17 new minority-owned businesses in historically gate-kept industries. Legal aid clinics were embedded in community colleges. Corporate partnerships grew, not through pressure alone, but because the results were measurable. Customer satisfaction improved. Internal discrimination complaints dropped. Public trust recovered where change was sincere. Still, she wasn't finished. The next step was education, deep, institutional, foundational. Not workshops, not seminars. Curriculum. She began by assembling a team of educators, historians, sociologists, and civil rights attorneys. Together, they designed a national pilot called Every Room Has a Door, aimed at high school juniors and seniors. The goal wasn't just to teach civil rights history. It was to teach power literacy. How systems worked, how bias crept in, how silence protected power, and how to push without begging. They launched the pilot in 10 schools across 5 states. Within a month, student feedback poured in. One wrote, For the first time, I understood why my mom made me dress extra nice when we went to certain stores. Another said, I didn't realize how often I shrank myself until I was taught to name it. Amara read every note. She responded to none publicly. The work wasn't about her. It was about what those students would do next. Meanwhile, the dealership industry quietly adopted updated protocols. An accreditation standard emerged, unofficial but influential. Dealerships that completed Seatbelt Corporate's internal training were marked as certified inclusive vendors. The public responded with their wallet. Consumer habits shifted. One study showed that dealerships with the certification experienced a 12% increase in first-time minority buyers over 6 months. A pattern had taken root. It wasn't loud, but it was firm. Cultural fluency had become an operational advantage. Inclusion had moved from marketing tactic to business necessity. Not because someone asked nicely. Because someone refused silence. That same year, a new lawsuit emerged in New York. A black couple denied a showing at a high-rise luxury property filed against the agency. Their case cited Johnson versus North Crest Automotive as precedent. Amara wasn't involved. She didn't even know them. But her case was now law. Her stand, legal architecture. One morning, she received an invitation from a prestigious university to teach a semester-long course on dignity frameworks and systems navigation. She declined the teaching offer but agreed to guest lecture. When asked why, she replied, I'm not here to hold chalk. I'm here to pass it forward. Her lecture filled the hall. Students sat on stairs and leaned against walls. No mic. No slides. She opened with, when I was denied a car, I was given something more important, clarity. Clarity on how much of the world was built without people like me in mind. I didn't want revenge. I wanted reconstruction. She walked them through the difference between representation and structural access, explained how philanthropy without follow-up was performance, showed how unchecked courtesy masked systemic exclusion. She didn't offer hope as a slogan. She offered strategy as a survival skill. Afterward, one student asked, How do you not get tired? She answered, I do. But I get up because the alternative is to make peace with shrinking. Back home, she kept her routine quiet. She still took public transport sometimes, still went to the same coffee shop, still answered emails herself. Fame had tried to find her, but she'd sidestepped it like an unnecessary invitation. What changed was how people saw themselves around her. A teenager once approached her at a seatbelt event and said, You don't look like a leader. Amara smiled. Good. Maybe that means you will. Her power didn't wear armor. It wore plain clothes and moved without announcement. Then came the government inquiry. A congressional subcommittee began investigating discriminatory practices in luxury market. Amara was called to testify, not as a victim, but as an expert witness. In her statement, she laid out the three-point architecture of modern exclusion: appearance-based profiling, sociolinguistic gatekeeping, and financial presumptions masked as service filters. She didn't dramatize. She defined. They listened. Following her testimony, the subcommittee released a bipartisan report calling for revised standards in consumer protections across retail, automotive, and housing sectors. No new laws passed yet. But seeds were planted. Still, Amara remained cautious. She told her team, systems don't collapse when challenged. They evolve to absorb the threat. Our job isn't to be loud. Our job is to stay effective. One late evening, she walked the halls of the original seatbelt office. The walls now held photographs, not of her, but of moments. Volunteers in action, customers signing contracts with confidence, a grandmother holding her new house keys. Legacy wasn't a statue. It was movement. She found a note taped to the wall. It read, I walked in afraid. I walked out armed. Thank you. She folded it and kept it. Later that year, Amara and her father attended a private dinner honoring community changemakers. He watched her receive a standing ovation and leaned over with a quiet smile. "Still think you were just trying to buy a car?" he asked. She gave a dry laugh. "I was. They just sold me something else." Malcolm raised his glass. "Best deal I've ever seen." She toasted without fanfare. The recognition was nice. But her mind was already on the next draft, the next expansion, the next door she hadn't walked through yet. Because the world had changed, and still needed more. It had been 2 years since the lawsuit, and Amara found herself standing at a crossroads again, but this time the path ahead was less uncertain. She'd spent the last few years reshaping the fabric of systems that never saw her coming, and now her work was influencing everything from consumer protections to how corporations managed their internal cultures. But in this moment, she felt the weight of what came next. The fight wasn't over, it had only expanded. She was sitting in a small office, not a grand boardroom, looking over the new proposal for Seatbelt's next phase. Digital dignity. The idea was simple. Millions of people interacted with companies online daily, many of whom still faced discrimination before they even reached the checkout cart. The internet wasn't exempt from biases that built walls around race, class, and gender. Amara's new initiative would target digital spaces, websites, e-commerce platforms, and even mobile apps, and create a standard of dignity for every interaction. It wasn't just about consumer rights anymore. It was about ensuring that the digital world operated as fairly as the physical one. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she wrote out the opening statement for the digital training module. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't designed to be. She needed it to hit the core of why digital spaces mattered. Every click is an interaction. Every scroll is a choice. And just like in person, dignity should never be an afterthought. The launch would be slow. Corporate partners would be hesitant. There would be pushback. She knew that, but she also knew that technology and algorithms didn't just shape the way people shopped, they shaped the way people were seen. Amara's phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. It was a reminder for a conference call with her legal team. The call had been scheduled to discuss the continued progress of Seatbelt Corporate, but now it was something more urgent. A major online retailer had reached out, wanting to create a partnership for a large-scale integration of the Digital Dignity Framework. They were offering millions in funding to implement the model across their platform. It was a big win, but it came with its own set of challenges. Amara wasn't interested in selling a model for the sake of revenue. She had always been clear on one point. This was about justice, not just profit. The retailers wanted a quick fix to avoid bad press. She'd seen it before. A corporate strategy to patch up their image after a controversy without fundamentally changing anything. But this? This could be different if handled right. As she joined the call, her thoughts circled. Her legal team laid out the terms for a potential agreement. There were promises of change, of accessibility improvements, and inclusivity, but there was one condition Amara wasn't prepared to overlook. She needed them to agree to transparency. Their commitment to change had to be visible, measurable, and unfiltered. They could not dictate how the story would be told. This couldn't be about a polished PR campaign. It had to be about result. "Is this the path you want to walk?" her chief legal advisor asked. "You're sure?" Amara paused, considering it. Her work had never been about taking shortcuts. It had always been about making people confront what they'd ignored for too long. "I didn't start this so I could sit at the table," she said. "I started it to move the table." She ended the call shortly after with a promise to review their final offer and make her decision later. The next week, Amara found herself back in her hometown of Oakland. The shift in the industry was palpable, but the challenges were still personal. She visited the community center again, where she'd started all this. There, she met with local business owners, talking about how to extend the principles of digital dignity to local startup. The people here weren't asking for handouts, they wanted tools. They wanted the ability to navigate the modern economy without being invisible. One conversation stuck with her. A young woman, new to entrepreneurship, had just launched an online clothing boutique. She'd spent years designing a brand that felt like home to her, products that represented her culture, her style, her voice. But every time she uploaded new stock, the website algorithms seemed to bury her designs. She didn't get the traffic she should have. Sales were slow. "It's like they're not seeing me," the woman said, frustration heavy in her voice. "Like, I'm in the wrong place or something." Amara listened quietly, then asked, "Have you thought about the algorithms? How much of it is them not seeing you?" The young woman stared at her blankly. She hadn't realized it, but the algorithm, the invisible gatekeeper, wasn't just steering customers away. It was reinforcing the belief that her products didn't belong. It was a small thing, but it had been happening every time a product launch failed to get traction. "You don't have to fit into their model," Amara said. "You make your own space. And I'll help you." That's when the idea for Digital Dignity took form, not just as a framework for corporations, but as a grassroots movement. It wasn't just about policies. It was about teaching business owners and individuals how to fight against digital erasure, how to write their own algorithms. If this was the next frontier, it was important that people didn't just play by the existing rules, but learned how to rewrite them. The seed had been planted, and soon after, she started reaching out to developers, data analysts, and digital strategists to build a platform for the community. They would have a space to come together, share stories, and offer solutions, tech tools that leveled the playing field. Amara's work had always been centered on lifting up others, but now she was also teaching them to lift themselves. Digital Dignity wasn't just a set of rules for big companies, it was a framework for independence. It was a tool to expose and dismantle the invisible structures that kept people out. And in doing so, it was a model for what was possible when individuals were equipped with the right knowledge. As Seatbelt moved into the digital age, the online platform gained traction. Small businesses were able to navigate the online marketplace more effectively. Consumers were now able to see where companies stood, whether they were simply paying lip service or genuinely transforming. And yet, Amara knew this work would never be done. The fight for justice, dignity, and equality wasn't a single battle won. It was a revolution, one that would span lifetimes. So she kept moving forward. Through every email, every partnership, every digital lesson learned. She kept moving because the work had no finish line. It only had the next step. And as long as people were still being overlooked, still being erased, she'd keep walking. The momentum built steadily, but Amara was clear-eyed about the work still ahead. Digital Dignity was evolving into a movement that reached beyond business and technology. It was becoming a cultural reckoning. Online platforms, once considered neutral ground, were now recognized as battlegrounds where bias thrived just beneath the surface. The fight wasn't just against people but against code, policies, and invisible barriers designed to exclude. Her mornings were spent strategizing with data scientists, reviewing reports on algorithmic discrimination, and consulting with civil rights lawyers about emerging digital privacy issues. The team had grown. There were coders developing bias detection tools, community organizers creating workshops for marginalized entrepreneurs, and policy experts lobbying for regulatory changes. Every day was a reminder that progress wasn't linear. It was contested, complex, and constantly shifting. At the same time, Amara remained deeply connected to the communities that had inspired her journey. She regularly held roundtables in neighborhoods overlooked by mainstream tech initiatives, places where high-speed internet was unreliable, where trust in digital systems was low. There, she listened to stories about how people's online interactions shaped their real-world opportunities. A young man explained how a job application portal kept rejecting him after multiple attempts, despite qualifications. A single mother shared how an online health service's automated responses ignored her urgent needs because she didn't fit a data profile. These conversations fueled Amara's conviction. Technology without equity was just another barrier. It was clear that legal frameworks and corporate programs weren't enough. The movement had to be intersectional, addressing race, class, gender, and digital literacy all at once. Empowerment meant giving people the tools to navigate and influence systems that were constantly evolving. During a meeting with her core team, Amara laid out the next phase: developing an open-source platform that allowed users to audit companies' digital practices publicly. Transparency would become a weapon. Users could report instances of digital discrimination, rate companies on inclusivity, and share resources to advocate for change. The platform would also provide educational materials on digital rights and algorithmic accountability, bridging the gap between tech complexity and everyday experience. One of the lead developers raised a concern. Companies will try to shut us down. We're talking about exposing their flaws in real time. There will be lawsuits, censorship attempts, and smear campaigns. Amara nodded. Then we prepare for resistance. We build a coalition of allies. Legal, technological, community-based. We make sure we have the resources to defend the platform and the people who use it. We're not just creating a tool. We're creating a movement with staying power. That same week, a controversial story broke about a popular social media site suppressing posts from creators of color. The backlash was fierce, and the company scrambled to offer vague apologies and promises of internal audit. Amara's team responded quickly, using the incident to highlight the urgency of their work. They published a detailed analysis on their platform, showing patterns of bias in content algorithms, and encouraged users to demand transparency. The story went viral, amplifying Digital Dignity's message across network. New users joined the platform daily, sharing first-hand experiences and rallying for collective action. For the first time, the digital divide felt less like an obstacle and more like a frontier to be conquered. But success brought scrutiny. Amara began receiving anonymous threats, both online and in person. Some were subtle, offhand comments from industry insiders dismissing her work as disruptive or unrealistic. Others were more direct, with menacing messages warning her to stop pushing boundaries. Security became a necessary concern. Instead of retreating, Amara leaned into the support of her community. She publicly addressed the threats during a major conference, turning fear into resolve. If standing up for dignity invites intimidation, then we are doing something right, she declared. Silencing voices has always been a tactic of oppression. But our voices are too many, and our commitment too strong. Her words resonated far beyond the conference hall. Advocacy groups, tech workers, and civil rights organizations rallied around her. Fundraising campaigns ensured that Digital Dignity could sustain legal defenses and expand outreach. The platform's code was made open source, encouraging developers worldwide to contribute and safeguard against attack. Amara's personal life adjusted to the demands. She spent fewer weekends at home and more in community centers and city halls. Sleep was fragmented. Moments of exhaustion were frequent, but her sense of purpose carried her forward. She often reminded herself why she started, because a young black girl had been pushed out of a dealership and refused to stay silent. One afternoon, she received a call from a prominent international foundation inviting her to speak at a global summit on digital rights and equity. It was an opportunity to elevate the work onto a worldwide stage. Amara accepted, recognizing that the challenges of digital exclusion were not unique to one country. At the summit, she shared stories collected from users of the platform, narratives that painted a stark picture of systemic exclusion masked by technology. She challenged governments and corporations alike. Technology reflects the values of those who create it. If we want a just future, we must demand accountability, transparency, and inclusion not as afterthoughts, but as foundations. Her presentation sparked dialogue and commitments from multiple countries to investigate digital discrimination. Partnerships were formed to replicate Digital Dignity's model internationally, adapting it to diverse cultural and legal contexts. Returning home, Amara reflected on how far the movement had come. What began as a personal fight had transformed into a global push for digital justice. The road ahead was daunting, but the seeds of change were growing. That evening, she sat quietly in her apartment, scrolling through messages from users who had found community, strength, and tools through the platform. A teenage girl from a rural town shared how she used the resources to challenge biased school admissions algorithms. A small business owner detailed how transparency reports helped them negotiate fairer terms with suppliers. Amara smiled softly, knowing this was the work that mattered. The fight wasn't just about one person's dignity, it was about collective power, about rewriting rules that had long been unchallenged. She opened a new document and began drafting plans for the next expansion, integrating artificial intelligence ethics into the movement, ensuring that emerging technologies served justice, not exclusion. As she typed, she thought of the countless faces, stories, and futures connected through this work. The fight was ongoing, but so was the progress, and Amara would keep walking forward, unyielding, focused, and determined to make sure every door stayed open.